Hello and welcome back to Kitco Mining with me, Paul Harris, in which today we welcome back Lewis Black, President and CEO of Almonty Industries. Lewis, welcome back to Kitco.
Good afternoon, Paul. Thank you for having me.
It's been a dramatic year for Almonty, which has seen you transform from an obscure niche metal company when we last spoke in January, February, to one of the most important names in the critical metal space, with your share price up about 250% since we spoke earlier this year. The video we did earlier this year is worth watching, as Lewis gave a concise top to bottom primer to tungsten, and we'll put a link to that in the notes to this video. Almonty certainly has hit the tungsten zeitgeist as the Western world has awoken to how critical this metal is for combat readiness, particularly with the US bombing nuclear facilities in Iran and NATO members committing to increase defense spending to 5% of GDP. Tungsten, as Lewis told us earlier this year, is a metal that gives weapons, such as those the US used in Iran, the ability to penetrate. In short, if the enemy has tungsten tips on its missiles and shells and you don't, you're going to be outgunned. That's about the long and the short of it, isn't it, Lewis?
I'm not so sure I agree with your word obscure, but in the definition of when we in our space we had obviously with the sort of last credible man standing, and we've taken this very seriously, and what we found is that in the last administration, the Biden administration, which really kind of started this whole snowball, the Biden White House put tariffs on a tungsten sector that didn't actually exist in the US. And that, of course, then greenlit China actually saying, well, and now we're going to talk about tungsten, and then the rest is history. And yes, we are in a very fortunate position where we do have enough excess capacity now that we're opening Korea to supply US defense needs. And I think that's been a big bonus for us, for our shareholders, but also for the US government, because it's not going to require their money, and it doesn't require them waiting 5-6 years for supply. We can fix one problem. The other 34 metals they need, I can't help them with, but at least they can tick one box.
Well, I was referring more to the fact that tungsten was a relatively obscure metal until recently. But I take on board your point. Now, you're just in the process of IPOing on the NASDAQ as part of a relocation to the US. You're also doing a concurrent upsized and oversubscribed $90 million offering. What is the aim with the NASDAQ listing and the relocation to the US?
Well, I mean, 85% of our material comes to the US anyway, and my original capital that helped me build this business all those years ago, 12, 13 years ago, all came from New York, from friends of the family, essentially, who are all, for a junior miner, after 12, 13 years, normally you've gone through 3 or 4 sets of shareholders and they're still underwater. Mine are still with me, and they're all hugely in the money. So it made sense. And despite my accent, I'm actually an American as well. So I think it made a lot of sense. We decided to onshore before the elections last year. So the timing was perfect. I think the current administration is taking a much more free market approach to building a supply chain than the typical, government-sponsored route, which of course is exciting. And as we're one of one, we get a lot of attention from people that would be normally way above our pay grade. So I think we're in a fantastic position right now.
You signed a binding offtake agreement to supply tungsten oxide solely for US defense applications earlier this year. This includes a hard floor price. You also, I understand, there's many meetings in Washington that you have to go to with different agencies, etc. Who are you meeting with, and what do they want to know?
Well, I can't be, terribly transparent about who I'm meeting with, because they make me sign all these kind of documents. But what I will say is that about 5 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago, we received a public letter from the House of Representatives asking us how much material we could provide from Korea, from our Korean asset, to the US for defense and national security purposes. We responded to that letter. Obviously, we didn't publish it. Apparently, I thought it was important that we keep some level of diplomacy going. But all I can say is that there are many areas of a supply chain that the US is now trying to resolve, and has been now really since the start of this new administration. I think they were very relieved that there was one solution already in place, which meant that they could focus on other things. But needless to say, news will be coming.
Fair enough. In our call earlier this year, you spoke a lot about how the tungsten sector, there's not necessarily a traded market for it, so pricing's opaque, things of that nature. The binding offtake agreement you recently signed, that includes a hard floor price. Why is that important for you?
Well, all our contracts now include hard floors and no cap on the upside. It's a way of sharing the price risk with the downstream consumer. So it's a kind of, I mean, in the past, all of that risk was placed upon the mine, and if it went against you, you just essentially mined your way into bankruptcy as you lost money on those offtakes. So as availability is actually more important than price now, it's our standard business terms, and we found after getting the first one. Getting now each one is very straightforward. I think my customers, look, none of them are generous, but they need what I have, and they feel that we're the only viable way of getting it. So if a hard floor with no cap on the upside is the cost of doing business, it is, and we haven't been greedy about it. We haven't said, oh, it's got to be above market. We've looked at it in a pragmatic solution, and I was very encouraged to see the U.S. government do something very similar last week with MP. And so, because before then, from what I understood, I was the only strategic metal company with hard floors and no caps on the upside.
Is there any movement on transparency in pricing as metals get more interesting? Companies like CRU or Benchmark Minerals Intelligence or Fast Markets start getting more involved in reporting and price discovery. Are you seeing a movement there?
Well, I think that governments are going to try and bring more transparency, whether through the CME or the LME, because a free market should determine price, not a nation. And what's happened with strategic metals is that you've had one nation determine pricing. And when you have price control, you control the sector. So step one, if you want to bring capital, smart money into a sector, you must have transparency on price. And smart money with transparency means that they're much better at evaluating projects than, say, government is. Government have great ideas. They're just not terribly good in the mining space at execution. So I think the current administration has very wisely, with what they've done with MP, is said, okay, we're going to support you, but we're not going to take the responsibility of assessing whether your idea is any good. We're going to put that onto the commercial banks, who, of course, will be much more diligent and much more experienced in assessing projects.
Now, as I mentioned, you're doing a $90 million raise concurrent with your NASDAQ IPO. So the financial sector wants to be part of the tungsten story. Bearing in light your comments just now about pricing, how do you see the financial sector evaluating tungsten, pricing tungsten, risk, etc.?
Well, I mean, we've had a tremendous. We were hugely oversubscribed. I can't tell you how much. I'm not allowed to. In fact, there's lots of things I can't tell you apparently, because now I'm under the SEC's watch. Under their watch, it's very different from Canada. So I'm learning as I go. But I think what I saw in the institutions that I presented to was that they acknowledged how important tungsten is to so many different sectors, not just defense. They acknowledge that we are pretty much one of one. Well, we are one of one, with the nearest next large-scale project coming maybe in a decade. And I think thirdly, they recognize the fact that this is all we've done, and we've done it for 5 generations, and we've become very good at it. And I think they felt very comfortable that with the right type of support and the right wind in our sails, we could really build something very important as a U.S. company. We'll be the only U.S. producer of tungsten. We'll be the only company with a transparent vertical smelter in a safe jurisdiction. So there are many firsts here, and I was really kind of honored, to be honest, about how the response and reception we got from some really great institutions.
Excellent. Congratulations there, Lewis. Now, your key asset is the Sangdong tungsten mine in South Korea, where the last time we spoke, you were in the process of restarting production. Why don't you give us an update about Sangdong?
Well, I mean, again, I have to do everything according to the prospectus we've just released. So we will be shipping material during the second half of this year. The last 3 months of any kind of construction is, it's a miserable time. Every contractor wants to kill me. I want to kill every contractor. Everybody's trying to squeeze every last nickel they can, as I am as well. But the good news is self-commissioning is underway. We have a good visibility on what's going on in the project. And this IPO has taken up a lot of my time. Now, as of tomorrow, I'm back in the saddle, to start, regenerating a whole level of new hate from my contractors. But ultimately, we are, on budget. It's looking good. Pilot plant's looking good. The mine is finished underground, already bringing ore to surface. So, we're in those final throes. This is a big, big project. This is not 4 guys in a shaking table in the middle of the outback. This is a significant scaled project, probably the largest tungsten project outside of China in terms of throughput. And it's being built, in an environment on the side of a mountain. So everything is very, it's engineered very specifically, but it's a big site.
Okay, now let's bring China into the conversation. China's the dominant force in the tungsten supply chain, as you mentioned earlier on. What's the ultimate aim for Almonty? Are you positioning the company to be the default tungsten supplier of choice to the militaries and other industries of the United States, the European Union, South Korea, etc.?
Well, I mean, my focus is the US and of course South Korea, with still a foot in Europe. I'm looking at defense, specifically now for national. I have enough tungsten for defense for the US. I have enough for the tungsten gas business in South Korea, which of course is for semiconductors. They consider to be, cornerstone of the national security, and about 63%, I estimate, of what the EU requires for their defense needs. I think, and this is under the new 5% GDP rule. The rest, I don't have any other tungsten outside of that. What I'm really feeling is that, deals have to be made with China, but people have to remember that China has been a very large procurer of Western concentrate and now scrap. Well, concentrate for the last 2.5 years and scrap just recently. The question is why? Why are they? They consume 50% of the world's tungsten. They produce 82%, 90 if you include North Korea and Russia. But why are they buying so much tungsten? Why are they net importers? What's really going on there? Because it's a scarce resource. It's one thing you've got to remember. Lithium and rare earths, it's not scarce. There are resources that haven't been developed, but they're not scarce. And tungsten is scarce. Scarce in the West. It's scarce in Russia. It's scarce in China. Why has China now become such a big consumer of non-Chinese concentrates? That's a question I'm still searching for the answer, because getting data is very difficult. But we didn't see tungsten price drop off in the last 4 years like all other commodities. Something's up.
Can I give a very flippant answer to that? China's become one of the dominant forces in snooker, so maybe they're trying to corner another aspect of pub games, darts, because obviously tungsten tips darts.
Well, that's obviously a possibility, however unlikely. And I'd like to say that my academic approach has been completely ruined by you, Paul.
No, seriously though, when we look at other sectors and other sectors in the critical mineral space, whether it's lithium to whatever, China's developed the processing capacity. It sucks in resources from all over the world to feed that processing capacity, and then it makes things that then it distributes and sells to the rest of the world. With tungsten, obviously the defense applications aspect puts a very different skin or wrinkle onto that. As part of that then, do your agreements with the United States government, the various militaries, etc., preclude you from supplying China? Or is that something you naturally not do?
No, I mean, I've never sold to China, not because I have anything against my Chinese colleagues, not at all. I just had so much demand from my Western customers that there was no need to look in that direction. But it's true. The problem with my focus on U.S. defense and national security is that I've essentially alienated 50% of the world's tungsten market. But and this may sound crazy in the 21st century, I believe, as an American, that conviction means something. I know that sounds nuts. We all chase the dollar, and I can still be very profitable and very successful. But I do believe in having a company and running a company with conviction, that we stand for something. We have an opportunity to resolve a big problem. We don't need assistance to do it. And I think what's key is that we believe in what we're doing, even though we're a tiny company and we're having a huge footprint right now. I believe in what we're doing. And yes, alienating China, it's not great, but I think I'll be okay.
Okay, now you're raising $90 million. What are you going to use that money for?
Downstream smelter, tungsten oxide smelter. 97.4% of Korea's oxide comes in from China, and it's a product that, as I said, we'd be the only vertical Western smelter in a safe jurisdiction. And so that's, that's what a terrible state our industry is in, that I can actually say that I'll be the only one with that facility. But I think it was important to look to value add a raw material that no one else currently has. That made sense for us. As a company, the Korean government is very supportive because they'd like at least to have some diversification options. There was no mandate. They don't make me sell to Korean companies, and they're not forcing Korean companies to buy from me. Korea doesn't operate like that. They just wanted very much the option of having an alternative, that it existed, because currently it doesn't.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground so far in our conversation, Lewis, but it does sound like the best is yet to come as the mining and the processing operation in South Korea ramps up. So maybe let's end by looking at some of the catalysts for later this year and going into 2026.
Well, phase one comes online. We start work on phase two. We will advance further with the tungsten oxide with the basic engineering. We're also looking at our moly, because that's obviously fully permitted. I want to bring some of that inferred into measured and indicated, 10, 12 years worth, just so I have something. Because right now my market capitalization has no appreciation at all for that project. So I'd like to start putting it into a form where we can start generating some value for it. And I think now that I'm shortly going to be an American company, and now that then we're listed now on NASDAQ as of, so that's been done. I think I may have some other things up my sleeve, but let's see. Let's see what ideas I have. Remember, I have something no one else has, and that is an important distinction.
Excellent. Well, congratulations on all your success, Lewis. Let's swing back, circle around again in a few months' time. I'm sure there's more updates to come. I'd love to cover that as well. Congratulations, and thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks very much, Paul. Thanks for having me.
And for our listeners, please stay tuned. Don't forget to subscribe. I'm Paul Harris, and this is Kitco Mining.